Alright guys, so today we're going to be putting this engine back together. This is a 1996 B230 FK engine from a Volvo 945. Issues with this engine was a couple of things. We had scoring and rust marks in cylinder number 3. So I tried honing it, trying to get it out, but it was still there, so I decided to drill it. So it's 0.3 oversized. And these are the bearings. There we go. Look at that. See those scoring, like those lines in there? They're not supposed to be there. Fortunately, the crank is good. We have slight damage to the cylinder head though, unfortunately. It's where the cam lies in the cylinder head. We have some slight scoring there, but it's fine. It'll be great. We got a lot of stuff going into this engine. We have new pistons, we have new connecting rods, we have a custom cam. Basically everything on the engine will be swapped. So it's definitely a full rebuild on this engine. Here we also have O-rings in the cylinder head, and we put that in place because we're going to be tuning this thing on E85 and we're going to be boosting the charge pressure up a little bit. So we want to make sure that we don't blow head gaskets, which is pretty common on these engines. So I went ahead and put a piano. Do you say piano? Piano. This is to help seal up the head gasket. So the steel part of the head gasket right there, see that steel piece right there, that will get squeezed between this O-ring right here and the cylinder head, creating a much tighter fit. There are also cylinder head gaskets that you can buy that have like a knife edge to them, which kind of drills into the block in the head. At least that's how I think they work, but they are very expensive. I don't know, what did I pay to get this done? Maybe $100. So this is a much better financially sound option. We're gonna start off by we're just gonna start assembling. I don't know how far we'll get today. Maybe this will be like part 1 and then we'll do part 2 and so on. Let's start by flushing out the channels for the oil. Let's get that all flushed out so that we don't have any kind of metal pieces or anything from the machining work that's been done to the block. Then we'll put the oil squirters for the pistons back. Then we'll start assembling the whole rotational unit. But first, before we do that, actually, let's bring the camera down and we can have a look at the oil canals and stuff so you guys can understand it better, how the oil flows in the engine. All right, so let's do that. All right, so this is how an empty B230 FK block looks like once you have the crank and pistons and connecting rods and everything taken out of there. And here we can also see the oil squirters that I was talking about right here. So these actually sit up there and then they squirt oil from out of here up to under the piston to cool it off. Kind of a function. I think those came they came standard on the engine blocks after like 1996. So how would you know if you have those squirters or not? Well, it's pretty easy to see. First of all, you will know that they're on all 1996 blocks. You can see the block stamp right there, 97. Why is it a 97? That's weird. 970220 is when this engine was made. And you can also tell by these 4 dimples. Well, this one's kind of discreet, but there's a dimple right there, right there, right there, right there. If you see those, you know you have a squirter block, as they say. Some people prefer them, some people don't. Well, let's just put it this way. I've never heard of someone with a squirter block wishing they didn't have the oil squirters. So I would say that, you know, squirter block is preferred anyway. All right, so let's talk about how the oil kind of flows in this engine block right here. So here you have the oil pump, which should be sitting around here. It gets driven by this axle that is supposed to sit in these 3 bearings right here. This guy right here, so this gear right here will drive this gear, and then this shaft will drive on here. So it kind of sits like this inside of the engine, driving the oil pump. Anyway, this sucks up oil from the oil pan, as you all know, pressurizes it and sends it up through this pipe right here. That pipe gets connected to this little fella right here, and then that leads up here. Now this is not the main oil gallery, but it is an oil passageway. Now this leads directly to the oil filter. So this filters the oil from the outside to the inside here. There's a little plug right there. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's a little plug that you can take out. That's just for cleaning this thing. So you can get that thing cleaned. And on here you have the oil filter. There should actually be an oil cooler and stuff on this B230FK block, but I only have an oil filter because I've gone with a different solution. Anyway, the oil comes out of here, goes through the filter and goes into this hole right here. That hole leads to the main oil gallery. So behind here there's a slot all the way. Let's see if you can see it. Yeah, it's actually right here. This is hollow inside, so there's like a hole going all across here. You can see it here. It's like a hole drilled all the way here. And here's a little engine brush for me to prove it. Okay, so you can see right down in that hole right there. You can kind of, well, you can't pick it up, but anyway, you're just gonna have to take my word for it. There's a hole drilled all the way through here. That is the main oil gallery. That's where everything gets its oil from. Now, drilled straight into the oil gallery, we have the oil squirters for the pistons. You definitely want to make sure that you put those back and don't miss them, because you will get absolutely zero oil pressure without them. We also have these 5 holes right here, drilled from the main journals into the oil gallery, straight in like so. That's the only hole. That's where they go into the main gallery, just like so. Now these will keep the main journals lubed up, obviously, and they will also transfer oil from here to here. And they will do that because the bearings have holes in them. See these slots right here? That's where the oil will go from this hole to this hole. Or the other way around, let's go from this hole to this hole. And then it will go from here and lube the bearing down there for the shaft that we was talking about earlier, this guy right here. Same thing here and here. So that middle shaft, as I like to call it, where the oil pump shaft or whatever gets oiled through the main journals here, or the main bearings. So that's kind of how oil flows within the engine block. And then you might think, well, how does it get up to the cylinder head? Well, I can show you that as well. Right, so if you notice on the block right here, we have a canal that goes straight into the main oil gallery, which was located right here. All right, this is also where you get the oil feed to the turbo. And it goes up here. So that is an oil canal right there. So that will feed everything in the cylinder head. And it's basically the same principle. In the cylinder head, we have an oil gallery as well. It comes up right here. So this is where the oil comes up, and it actually goes with the bolt. Let's see, you can actually see the hole inside of there. That's where the oil goes in to the oil gallery, which is right behind this little hex right there. Right here, we have the same principle as in the engine block. You have a hole that is drilled the entirety of the cylinder head, and then you have where it comes up to meet the camshaft right here. So then that lubes the camshaft, and then that squirts oil everywhere, and everything up here gets lubed. Here you can also notice the marks that we have on the cam side right here, and there's also another damage somewhere. Yeah, right there. Yeah, right there, there's a little damage. You can see it's probably from poor handling somewhere along this project. If it was me during transport or whatever, we'll have to file that down and make the best of the situation. Here we can also see the cylinder head. It's gotten some bushings inside of the valve stems. The valve stems have basically been drilled out, and we have pushed in a bushing in here to make it sealed up again. So it's kind of a way to restore without pushing out the entire steering. We've got no work done to the head, so it's still a very much stock head. No porting, no nothing like that. It's just been very thoroughly cleaned, as you can see. This is done by SAVattenblästring here in Sweden. Link in the description for you guys if you want your cylinder head to look like this. You can get rid of all the oxidization and everything. Really makes it worth, I think. And the same guy actually did all of these parts. So we have, you know, and the things, you know, they come up looking like new, which is really nice. This is plated. This is plated by me, so don't worry about that. But, you know, intake manifold looks brand new. Anyway, let's get back to this engine. Okay, we gotta start by putting the crank in here. Now we're gonna measure out the crank, make sure the play is good, because we have stock bearings, stock glycol bearings. This is for the, these are for the connecting rods, and then we have for the main bearings right here. We're gonna make sure we have the right play, or at least within spec. But it's actually worse to have it too small. However, I don't think that's possible, but I would rather have it a little bit too big of a play than too small. We'll be putting that in, and then we'll checking that off with the flexi gauge from ACL right here, which is basically a rip-off of, you know, the plastic gauge. It's pretty much the same thing. We will be assembling everything with the Lucas oil, assembly oil. We also got some Loctite and stuff for, you know, bolts that need it, stuff like that, flywheel, etc. We have new connecting rods, H-beam, a little bit more stable. You can probably handle up to 800 horsepower. You know, we're gonna push a little bit more power on this thing. We got new pistons, stock pistons, nothing, not billet or anything like that, but, you know, stock pistons, pretty much good up to 500 horsepower, no issues. And running a daily with like Viesco pistons, I don't know, I wouldn't recommend that. So let's clean this block off and get the crank in there, all right? These bearings come like, they're like dipped in a film of oil. So you want to make sure you get that off before you do any kind of measurements. It's the same thing with, you know, brake discs, flywheels, anything that's like raw metal is usually dipped in some kind of preservative oil or something like that. You want to get rid of that. All right, so I have cleaned off the crank as good as I can get it. And we're just gently gonna be putting it in here. A little bit tricky here with the axial bearing. And then we'll put these on. Now these are numbered 1 through 5. Number 5 being towards the flywheel side here, and number 1 is where the harmonic balancer is. So we're just gonna go ahead and put these in. If you're wondering this way or this way, and there's a little teardrop here, and you want the pointy thing of the drop to be towards the front of the engine. All right, so it says that these should be oiled in, so I'm just gonna go ahead and dip them in oil and then let them dry off a little bit. All right, so I've been looking absolutely everywhere for those 2 bolts. And where are they? They're in the engine, of course. There they are. God, like sometimes you just don't believe yourself what you're capable of. Let those dry for a bit. And if you think this is unnecessary, you're probably right. Feels good anyway. feels like the right thing to do, even though it might be a little much. All right, so when it comes to torquing these things down, those are supposed to be torqued 110 Newton meters. I've actually gone ahead and bought a couple of new tools to make my future videos a little bit more exact. Been on the to-do list for quite some time to get a couple of more torque wrenches so that I can, especially like this one, when I can go down as low as 5 Newton meters. So this, in combination with this guy and my old one, we should be covered. Like I said, 110 Newton meters for these bolts. So let's set this one to 110 Newton meters and torque them down. And you want to start from the center and work your way out. When tightening, if you're letting something loose, you want to do it the other way. You never want to start tightening from the outside in, because it will start to like bow things, but it's not on a crank. I don't think it matters, but if you're doing like a cylinder head and stuff, yeah. Now we've tightened it down, now let's let it loose. All right, so we're getting ready to use this plastic gauge, well, flexi gauge, I guess it's called in this case. Same thing, different brand, right? It's a plastic strip that goes onto your main or connecting rod bearings, just to measure how much sloppage there is in them. Now you want to make sure you get the right kind of a plastic gauge. I'm expecting this to be somewhere around 0.05. So I got the one that is 0.025 to 0.076. So it should be around here somewhere. Wow, there's a lot of these in here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 packages. Let's get one of these. This is the first time I'm doing this, by the way. So this is where we will be comparing later, I guess. So where are the strips? I don't think it is this sensitive, but I don't know what I'm doing. So we'll just do that, and then we'll snip off the width of the bearing. Must be funny watching me not knowing what I'm doing. Okay, so we'll just roughly, you know, take around there. Straight across right there. Do you guys see it? No, you don't. Can you see it? I can barely see it. Okay, let's get our gauge here. Let's kind of see. 0.003. Oh, here's the millimeter scale. Yeah, I was a bit confused. I was like, what? Okay, yeah, it is about 0.706. So that is a little bit worn. It's a little bit on the worn side. I think it's supposed to be 0.05 originally, like stock. It's probably a slightly higher number on the outside. It's kind of got a taper on it. Yeah, 0.076, 0.064. 0.064 as well. Yeah, I would say 0.076. Maybe slightly higher even. A little bit worn, yes, that's expected. The engine has done 400,000 kilometers, so I think it's 41,000 kilometers now actually, so yeah, it's definitely got some miles on it. So what we're going to be doing now is installing the oil squirters before we forget that. Now these don't, at least what I can't find like what torque these should have, so we're just going to go with the general torque. I think that these are M8 or equivalent. Yeah, it's about an M8, so I would say 24 Newton meters tops, because these are kind of special with the hollow stuff, but it is machine steel, I guess. We're also going to go ahead and clean these off and make sure that they're not clogged in any way. The only thing you gotta think about here is that you don't turn these guys the wrong way, because that's actually possible to put them in, you know, like so. And that would not be good. Have a crank squirter instead. I think I'm gonna go ahead and tighten those down to 20 Newton meters. Should be enough. Okay, so we have the oil squirters in there. We've measured the main bearing clearance. So according to my watch, we should be able to start assembling this thing without an issue. All right, moment of truth. Does it spin freely? Yes, it does. That is good. Oh, that is nice and smooth. Chinesium. Very, very cheap. Well, they're not very, they're about $100 a piece for these, and hopefully they should be just like the originals. So let's double check that. Okay, here is, let's put 3 of these to the side. And let's take a look at, looks about right. Stock connecting rod, performance connecting rod. Quite beefier in every single way. This is the weak link in a B230 engine. They don't cope with much more than 300 horsepower, and then they're gone. So that, you definitely want to upgrade that when you're inside one of these engines doing some work. Just go ahead and get yourself some new connecting rods. Now these should be exactly the same. 24.8. 24.8. Up here we have 24.8. I think this one's a little bit off. 24.8. And this guy, 23. 23. 23. This one should be 52 or something. 52. 52. So a problem that happened to me while doing this entire build and buying all the parts and stuff was getting these performance connecting rods. This was quite the hassle because you have, there are a lot of variants on this. Getting this exact one was pretty difficult. Most of the time, I guess that people also exchange the pistons. This right here, this is a stock piston. So if you're going to be running with stock pistons, you need to have, because Volvo, okay, let's put it this way. There are 2 main versions of controlling the sloppage, if you will, side to side on the connecting rod. There are 2 versions to do this. Either you can take up the slop in the piston up here, or you can take up the slop in the big end, which is right here, down at the crank. So usually you say, you know, crank or piston controlled connecting rod. Like, I'm trying to translate this in my head as I'm talking. I'm not sure that's what they say, you know, in America. There might be a different word for it, but we say steering, so styrning av vevstake. Volvo, much like Mercedes on some models, steer the connecting rod from the piston, which means there's no, like, the tolerances are up here at the piston. So there's a very specific measurement to keep this thing from wobbling around like this up in the piston. But down here on the crank, this thing can move quite a lot. Now, most connecting rods today don't steer, like aftermarket connecting rods today, don't steer on the piston. They steer on the crank, which means the sloppage in the crank is gone. And then you have sloppage up here at the piston instead. Yeah, I think you guys are very confused by now. The best advice that I can give to you is if you're going with stock pistons, if you're gonna run your old ones or new ones or whatever, if you're running the stock pistons, make sure you get a connecting rod that has the same measurements as your standard connecting rod. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna weight, right? No, we're not gonna weight. We're gonna weigh these connecting rods and we're gonna weigh the pistons. Let's open one of these up and see if the piston rings are on the piston or what the deal is. All right, so here's the pin. So there's no need to clean all those pins. And there's the piston. And it is assembled, I can see. That's a little bit unfortunate because I don't have the proper tool to remove these piston rings. Yeah, we're gonna weigh the pistons. We're gonna weigh the connecting rods and then we'll pair them up. All right, I got a confession to make. I do not have a piston ring plier or anything even closely to it. So I'm gonna have to do this manually. Get the piston rings off, that is. I know. It's a gamble. We got 3 rings on this. The bottom one is a complete ring with a spring. And then we have a compression ring and an oil scraper ring. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I did find a scale. It's my wife's. Oh, it's got oil in it. Tear. Right, so let's see how accurate this thing is. I'm gonna weigh these. 600. 600. Okay, so it's going bananas now. 0, okay, 595. Okay, so it's 613 now. That's great. Awesome. Not accurate at all. 716 grams. Look at this, guys. This is just, that's 100 grams off. 717. 597. 597. 597. Oh my God, that's not even, that's the stock connecting rod, God dang it. 597, okay, so they're all equal weight. That's actually quite interesting, 597, and this thing's 716. So they're quite lighter as well. That's actually quite a lot. That's a lot of weight reduced from the throw. I'm actually impressed that it was that much lighter. I didn't think that. All right, piston weight, 536. I think we're gonna have to get all the 4 pistons and just kind of bam, bam, bam. But at least we know that these are weighted and they weigh the same. So now I gotta undress all the pistons.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
That's okay, that's fine. These pistons are pretty badass though. I mean, nothing happened. Don't do that though. Be very careful. Right. 538, 535, 538, 532. But this thing is kind of, oh, it was actually sitting on the piston rings. Okay, let's do this one more time. 536, 536, 536, even Steven, 536, what the heck? 536. Plus minus 1 gram is just fine by me. That's okay. How is that even possible? I've never heard of that. How about these? 144, 144, 144, 144. Well, that's that video gone. All right, well, thank you. Bye. Well, I guess we'll just put them together then. I don't know. That wasn't necessary. Why did I even take the piston rings off? Oh yeah, because I need to possibly file those in. I guess I won't have to do that either. So we have a piston ring in here. Now we're gonna measure the gap. All right, so let's put the piston and connecting rods together. I can't find any good information on how to assemble these two. Like if it's this way or this way. So honestly, I don't know. All I know is that these pistons have a way of phasing, so there's a little arrow on the piston. So you can see right there, there's a piston. That should be pointing forwards. The one thing that I'm gonna make sure is that I do the same thing for all of them. So I'm just gonna go ahead and decide that, yeah, it's gonna be on the right side. And we're just gonna take, this is gonna be piston number 1. We'll be facing forwards. We're putting it on the right side, like so. I have no idea what I'm doing. All right, so facing me to the right. Oh, that is a tight fit. Now we have these rings here that lock it all in place. So you have one on this side and one on the other. How we get them in there is another question. Offset these things about 120 degrees from each other. So there we go. That's one piston done for cylinder 1. Great. Let's put that to the side. All right, so we're getting ready to put the pistons inside of the engine, and I say we have no time to waste, so let's just get on with it. I did find this piston compressor, but it's from like 1985, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up a little bit. That didn't feel good. That didn't feel good at all. Nothing broken, not broken, not broken. Good. Nothing broke, it just snapped a little bit. That's it for today, I guess.